Yes, sir. Roger.
I might pick up my sling cyclometer just for a second, but I'm not going to explain it or anything.
Pick it up. Woo, woo, woo.
Okay.
Party favor.
So now we're streaming out.
Why would you be that far left on camera too?
Because it was set up different. It hadn't been moved yet.
I thought you had already framed it.
No, sir.
Sorry, I thought you had already framed it.
They're putting on their jackets. That's the way it needs to be.
Mine's tilted up.
After I crashed it up.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. George Bartisla with the Florida Aviation Network. Welcome to Sky Insights. Today we'll be talking about flying in the vicinity of thunderstorms. And as soon as that goes, there we go. It's on the wrong screen. What I'm going to talk about today is normally a one semester class in atmospheric thermodynamics, but we're going to reduce that. There we go. We're going to reduce that to 30 minutes. Here we go. First off, thunderstorms are very dangerous to people in aircraft. They require simultaneous atmospheric preconditions that are especially common in the spring and summer in North America. Remember something, a thunderstorm is one of the weather's cyclical process. We can wake up in the morning, there's not a cloud in the sky. By noon, it's clouding up. By afternoon, we can have thunderstorms, hail, lightning, damaging winds, and possibly a tornado. By 8 o'clock at night, there can be a clear sky. So thunderstorms contain a dangerous assortment of severe weather hazards, including the possibility of tornadoes. These hazards can include lightning, hail, turbulence, wind shear, and icing. There are an estimated 40,000 thunderstorms every day worldwide, with the United States experiencing a significant amount. Thunderstorms normally alter our air traffic plans because they're typically too high to fly over, too dangerous to fly through or beneath, and normally too large to fly around. Thunderstorms have caused many accidents and incidents which have involved every kind or type of aircraft, from small general aviation aircraft to large transports, including military, cargo, and airliner service. The turbulence within a thunderstorm, including the shear associated with severe updrafts and downdrafts, have destroyed aircraft in flight and led to multiple fatalities. This is what we're talking about today, a cumulonimbus cloud. When you see a cumulonimbus cloud, that's what you should be thinking. Now, we're going to be using as a reference the FAR AIM and the latest advisory circular from the FAA on thunderstorms. There's no known correlation between the physical appearance and severity of turbulence and hail in a thunderstorm. In other words, you can't tell by looking at it from the air what it's going to have. Airborne weather avoidance radar is, as its name implies, for avoiding severe weather, not for penetrating it. Severe turbulence, hail, and lightning can be experienced up to 20 miles away from the severe thunderstorm itself. No flight path through an area of strong or very strong radar echoes separated by 20 or 30 miles or less may be considered free of severe turbulence. METAR reports do not include a code for severe thunderstorms. Avoiding thunderstorms is the best policy. A 180-degree turnaround may save your and your passenger's life. Do not land or take off in the face of an approaching thunderstorm. A sudden gust front of turbulence could cause you to lose control. NEXRAD radar mosaic imagery can show where the weather was 5, 10, 15, or 20 minutes ago, not where the weather is now. There's always a delay in the scanning and the processing. Be sure to advise ATC that you are deviating from thunderstorms and remind ATC that you are resuming your original route later. Remember to initiate a PIREP for any unique flight conditions that you encounter. If you can't navigate around the storm, divert to a ground runway and wait out the storm. Avoid the possible death of get-there-itis. Now, if you're flying IFR and for some reason you end up in a thunderstorm, remember, tighten your seatbelt and shoulder harness. Make sure the pitot heat and carb heat are on, or if it's a jet turbine, a gas turbine, make sure all the anti-ice systems are on. Establish a reduced airspeed recommended in the Pilot Operating Handbook for turbulence, and I'll show you one in a minute. Turn up the cockpit lighting to maximum to counter the lightning from temporary blindness. Keep visual activity on instruments, avoid looking outside. Allow the altitude, the airspeed, and the heading to fluctuate. Ride out the storm, don't fight it. Once in the storm, don't turn back. A straight course is usually the fastest way through. Now, here's an example of a Pilot Operating Handbook for a Cessna 172, And you can see there's a recommendation for turbulent air penetration speed, somewhere between 82 knots indicated airspeed and 99 depending on the gross weight of your aircraft. Now, what is a thunderstorm? A thunderstorm is a local storm produced by a cumulonimbus cloud like we see in that picture. It's always accompanied by lightning and thunder. It's accompanied by strong winds, heavy rain, and hail. And by the way, I'll be repeating some things to make sure they get through. It's usually too high to fly over, too dangerous to fly under, and usually too difficult to fly around. Should be recognized as hazardous and dangerous. Flight through storms have caused accidents and fatalities. Now, where are thunderstorms? Actually, a thunderstorm can happen anywhere, but in the spring and the summer, like right now, the majority of thunderstorms that we care about here in Florida are in the southeastern United States, in Mississippi, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and Florida. But thunderstorms can happen anywhere, especially in the Midwest, in Tornado Alley, or even in Massachusetts. They can happen anywhere. Now, thunderstorms have lightning. Yes, we have fatalities. And lightning fatalities happen at airports just like they can happen anywhere else. And these numbers really relate to the population of those areas in addition to the weather potential. Here for the state of Florida, once again, the capital for lightning in the United States, not the world, is somewhere around Polk County there in 25 and 37 fatalities. But Broward County, Palm Beach County, and can't think of the name of the county, that's okay. Down there is where all those thunderstorms are and lightning is. Now Miami-Dade. Now even though we have static discharge wicks on our wings, planes can still get hit by lightning and be damaged. Now, we used to say, if you see a lightning bolt, you wait and count so many seconds, you can tell how far away it is. Forget that. That's a dangerous way to think about it. If you can hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck by lightning, and luckily you weren't struck. Now, we could spend the entire day talking about lightning, but let's just talk in brief. When cumulus clouds rise to about 10,000 feet, an electrical charge starts to build in the cloud and lightning's possible. We have to have ice in the cloud for there to be a charge that can develop. When a cumulonimbus cloud reaches 20,000 feet or more, a huge charge can build, allowing a bolt of lightning to hit the ground, releasing a deadly electrical shock. Warning, a person's hair can stand on end just before the lightning strikes. Stay away from all tall objects, trees, flagpoles, anything that's tall, because that's where lightning's going to hit. Or open areas like water, like at the beach. If someone is hit by lightning, begin CRP. It is safe, CPR. It is safe to touch the person. The body does not retain an electrical charge. If the person is not conscious, does not have a pulse, and does not appear to be breathing, use an automated external defibrillator, an AED, if you're trained and if there's one on hand. No matter what, call 911 for help ASAP. Now, how do we know what we know about thunderstorms? Originally, we didn't know anything, and we had all kinds of accidents when planes flew through thunderstorms. In August 1940, there was a crash near Lovettsville, Virginia, a Pennsylvania Central DC-3 that was carrying a Senator Lundeen from Minnesota and 24 others. Then World War II came. Approximately 25% of all the aircraft, the Allied aircraft lost during World War II, were due to some kind of weather event, mainly icing, but other things. Well, after the World War II ended, the University of Chicago, the Navy, and the Army Air Corps / Air Force got together and created what was called the Thunderstorm Project. In 1946, they came to Central Florida for a year to fly through thunderstorms, and then moved to southwestern Ohio to fly through thunderstorms in 1947. They flew Northrop P-61 Black Widows, which was a plane designed specifically for night flight and radar. They selected volunteers, and they took all the armament off these planes, and each plane had 2 people, a pilot and a meteorologist, and in the back was a movie camera taking videos of the instrumentation. They flew in at 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25,000 feet to take data on what was going on inside those clouds. And if you want to watch it, this is from a YouTube online. Just Google the Thunderstorm Project. Now, this is, not quite, this is what they discovered from the original report. It starts out as a cumulus cloud in the cumulus stage where we have updrafts. Then it turns into what we now call the mature stage, where we have updrafts, downdrafts, lightning, thunder, damaging winds, and possibly tornadoes. And then it dissipates where we have primarily downdrafts. This is an example of an air mass thunderstorm versus a frontal thunderstorm. And yes, they are suicidal, but the cool draft kills the updraft, which is why they don't live long enough to become severe. Notice the storm is straight up and down. We don't have any upper level shear tilting the storm over, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Now, this is the modern version of that report. As air heats the surface, the air becomes buoyant, it rises and cools and creates updrafts. When it condenses, it turns into clouds. Cloud droplets coalesce to form larger droplets. Drops become heavy enough to fall as rain. The descending air creates the downdrafts and potentially microbursts. In the dissipation stage, downdrafts cool surface air, eliminating the source of lift, and the storm rains itself out. It can still generate a microburst. Here it is again in summary. We have a cumulus stage, we have the mature stage, which is the dangerous stage, and then we have the dissipating stage. Now, how does a thunderstorm form? There's have to be three main ingredients. The first one, of course, is we have to have moisture in the atmosphere. And for the most of the United States, that means the air from the Gulf of Mexico coming up into the middle of the country. The atmosphere must be unstable. What does that mean? That means as we go up, the air gets cooler. If the meteorologist or the weather person says the atmosphere is unstable, that means air can rise. That means we can get vertical development. Then there has to be some kind of trigger to get the air moving in the first place, some kind of lift agent, which can be a frontal boundary, a cold or warm front. Most thunderstorms take place in front of cold fronts, or a gust front from another storm, and I'm going to show some more possibilities here in a minute. But there can be a fourth ingredient, and that's upper air shear. Turning of the wind direction, change in wind speed in the atmosphere helps maintain or organize storm activity and starts to tilt the storm. Now, think about from the point of view of a glider pilot. He or she is looking for a thermal. A thermal is the beginning of a potential cumulus cloud. There are several reasons we can get thermals. Orographic lifting from mountains, convection, and the frontal boundary. Here in Florida, this is the Florida Aviation Network, but we're going out all over the world. But let's just talk about the unique situation in Florida that doesn't occur anywhere else on the planet. We get air coming off the water. When the sun heats the earth, it's at the wrong wavelength to heat the air, so only a little bit of the solar radiation heats the air. Most of it heats the land re-radiates at the right wavelength to heat the air, and the air starts to rise, which creates a low pressure to suck in air if next to the water from the water, and we get what's called a sea breeze circulation. Notice the bottom picture. In Florida, we have two sea breezes, one from the Gulf side, one from the Atlantic side, and that causes the air to come in from both sides of the peninsula with a little altercation there from Tampa Bay. And if there were no other weather systems, no high pressure, no low pressure, no jet stream coming down over the peninsula, we'd have thunderstorms right down the middle of the peninsula every day in the summer. But we don't usually because we have other weather systems, high pressure, low pressure, and the jet stream. Now, this is the picture that we want to understand here in a minute. Now comes all those mathematical equations you've been waiting for. Just kidding. Let's simplify it. One way to simplify it, here's a hint. Why do clouds have flat bottoms? That's what we want to understand next. The amount of water vapor that an air can hold depends on the temperature. Warmer air can hold more moisture. The dew point is the temperature. It must be cooled to become saturated or 100% humidity for cloud formation. We say if the dew point and the temperature are within 5 degrees or less of each other, we can get a thunderstorm, we can get a cloud, we can get fog if it's on the ground. How do we measure that? We measure it with a sling psychrometer. All pilots should have a sling psychrometer. Thank you. The lapse rate is the rate a particle of air cools as it rises. Air cools as it rises because of decreasing atmospheric pressure, the same thing that makes the altimeter in your cockpit work. Atmospheric stability, again, is resistance to vertical motion. Vertical motion. Once again, if the weather person says that the atmosphere is unstable, it means we already have vertical motion. Latent heat is the amount of heat released or absorbed during a phase change, such as during condensation and evaporation. Now, as I said, all the energy for the weather on Earth comes from the sun, but it's absorbed by the oceans and the land and re-radiated into the air. The dynamite of severe weather, however, is moisture. It's water. No moisture in the air, no clouds, no thunderstorms. Now, most of us are familiar with the sensible heat transfer, such as when you have a pot of water on the stove, you touch the hand, you're getting conduction heat. You can see convection heat during the boiling, and radiation is coming off the burner. But there's another kind of heat transfer that we refer to as latent heat transfer, which takes place during evaporation or condensation. We've all been to a pool or to the beach to swim, and when you get out of the water, no matter what the water temperature is or the air temperature, you feel cold because the water that's on you is turning to a gas, it's evaporating, and it's sucking the heat out of your 98.6 body to make that happen. Well, if evaporation is a cooling process giving off heat, the reverse, condensation, is a heating process. When water condenses, it gives off heat. Now, we talk about this in a system in meteorology called lifting a partial. Lifting a partial or a blob of air acts just like a hot air balloon. We're going to take this situation, pretend we're at the beach. That car on the left, the dark colored SUV is ours. We leave our towels inside, we lock the door, we go out and swim for an hour or so. We come back and we open the door on that car, and it's 150 to 250 degrees in there now from the greenhouse effect. As we open the door, a bubble of air comes out and starts to rise. And as it rises, it expands. As it expands, it cools, and it gets up to some elevation, some altitude where it equalizes the temperature around us. And that's the end, and it starts to sink back down. Now let's change the story. We take those towels and dry off and get them all wet. And if you're at Daytona Beach in the summer, you can look either direction, and there's a little truck selling hot dogs and sodas. We throw all our towels back in the car, lock up the car, go to one of those places to get a hot dog and a soda. And while we're there, that car is heating up, and the water that was on you, that was on the towels, is now saturating the air in the car. This time when we come back and open the door, we get another bubble of air, and it's going to rise again, but it's going to rise a little more slowly. It's going to expand a little slower. But when it gets up to the point where it's cooled down to the dew point, the water is going to condense out, and we're going to form a cloud. And those levels now, the initial level that makes the flat part of the bottom of the cloud is called the lifted condensation level. If there's no inversion, it will start to rise on its own. We call that the level of free convection, until it has condensed out all the energy to the equalization level. Here's a nice illustration out of a weather book for glider pilots. Notice the air comes up to the bottom of the cloud. We call that the dry adiabatic lapse rate because nothing is condensed yet. As it goes through the cloud, we call it the saturated or moist adiabatic lapse rate, and then it leaves the cloud back to the dry adiabatic lapse rate. So here we have saturation, which is the base of the cloud, positive buoyancy that gets the updraft going, and the equalization level. Now we have 4 main kinds of thunderstorms. I'm going to go into them just in a little bit. Single cell have severe weather. This is the kind of air mass thunderstorms that we get here in the state of Florida. They can be dangerous to the public and very dangerous to aviation. Here's a typical air mass thunderstorm like we'd have in Florida. Here's an excuse me. Here's an air mass thunderstorm like we'd have in the Midwest. Multi-cell storms means we have multiple cells creating the thunderstorm. These are extremely dangerous to people on the ground and people in the air. Moderate danger to public, but moderate to high danger for aviation. We call them multiple because they're going through the process of cumulus, mature, dissipating, cumulus, mature, dissipating, and they can do that all afternoon. So on the left here we see cumulus, turns into towering cumulus, turns into mature stage, turns into dissipating stage. Excuse me, remember what I said, it's a process. We start out the day without a cloud in the sky, by noon we have clouds, by afternoon we have thunderstorms, and then we have nothing in the sky. And finally the big daddy, the supercell storm. Here we have a rotating storm. A rotating storm. So we not only have updrafts and downdrafts, but we have upper air shear that's tilting the storm. These are extremely dangerous to aviation. Here's what I meant by a rotating updraft. How does that updraft end up rotating? Thank you. Well, when the downdraft comes down out of the storm and hits the ground, it creates like a donut, a roll, a vortex, a rolling vortex, and that rolling vortex can get sucked up into the thunderstorm, and part of it will become that vortex that's rotating in the storm. But notice in this picture, the storm is now tilting from the shear. As a spinning horizontal vortex gets drawn into the supercell's updraft, it tilts vertically, creating rotation in the updraft. Here's another example of that. And here's more information. How does a supercell thunderstorm start to rotate? Supercells or mesocyclones get their spin by eating or ingesting long spinning horizontal vortex tubes of warm, moist air. How does a supercell ingest spinning horizontal vortexes? The vortex tube gets pulled up in the storm's updraft. This is the beginning of a possible tornado. But you as a pilot need to know this because you're not only potentially going to fly into an updraft or a downdraft, you're going to fly into vortices. Here's a cross section of a supercell. You can see in the middle there it says main updraft, but now it has a forward flank downdraft and it has a rear flank downdraft. And this is how that looks illustrated. The updraft is in yellow, the downdrafts are in blue. We have a big downdraft in the front, we call the forward flank downdraft, and we have another downdraft in the rear, we call the rear flank downdraft. Now, Professor Snodgrass at the University of Illinois has done this video for the Great Courses. Highly recommend the Great Courses. This is one of the best weather videos I've ever found. You can buy it for the Great Courses as an online stream, or you can find them on eBay or Amazon. Now let's take a look at this. Okay, and as far as I know, this has no audio to it. See what's happening? That vortex is getting sucked up in the thunderstorm. It's rotating. It's stage one of turning this into a mesocyclone. This is the wall cloud that is a result of it pulling up that vortex and spinning around. The wall cloud actually forms and starts to come down. So as we move, okay, so here we have that mesocyclone rotation. Notice the storm is tilted, and now we're going to get the forward flank downdraft in just a minute here. There we go. There's the forward flank downdraft. It's going to create another donut of rotating vortex, but as it goes down, the other air is coming in, and the inward air is going to create a real intense rotating vortex. There it is. And that vortex is going to get pulled up or sucked up again by the other vortex that's already in the cloud, and that's what's going to create the wall cloud part. There it is. And remember, all this has to line up perfectly or we don't get all this. We call it the Goldilocks principle. Everything has to be just right. Now we've got a wall cloud and a funnel cloud, but we don't really have a tornado yet. The tornado is going to come from the rear draft. There's the formation stage. There you're actually seeing a rotating mesocyclone. And if you watch it carefully in the middle, you're going to see a little funnel drop down right. You can see it starting to come down. That is the formation stage of a tornado. There comes the funnel cloud. Obviously, you don't want to be flying anywhere near this. And then finally, we're going to get the rear flank downdraft that's going to create, there it is, a rear flank downdraft is going to create another rotating vortex like a donut, and it's going to get pulled up or ingested or sucked up into the cloud, and it is going to become the tornado. We'll see here in a minute. There we go. There's that donut vortex. Okay. Okay, and that's what I wanted to show there. So I showed you that so you'll understand. Let's go back to the slides, please. We showed you that so you'll understand what's in there. And here's a summary of everything we just watched. We've got the mesocyclone vortex in the middle. Notice that the cloud is tilted. The front flank downdraft was part of it. The rear flank downdraft was the other one. So if you fly into one of these, there isn't just an updraft and a downdraft. There are things that are going to rip you and your plane apart. We just want to mention hail in passing. Hail is the accumulation of water being pulled up, falling and accruing more water, going up, coming down, and eventually coming down, hitting your aircraft. Downdrafts can become serious microbursts. Downbursts, I'm running out of time here. We study microbursts. Remember, you have special training in microbursts before we understood them. When you fly into a microburst, the airspeed goes up and people didn't know what it was, so they pulled back on the throttle. Now we know to push ahead on the throttle because we're going to lose airspeed. Now I'm going to go through a quick review. Formation of an elevated cumulus thunderstorm. High humidity, lifting force, and unstable atmosphere. The typical life cycle of a thunderstorm occurs in 3 stages: cumulus stage, mature stage, and dissipating stage. Thunderstorms create their most severe weather during the mature stage. The meteorological phenomena that always occurs with a thunderstorm is lightning. If there's a local thunderstorm activity on approach to land, expect wind shear and turbulence. Atmospheric stability is the resistance of the atmosphere to vertical motion. As a partial of air rises, it expands and cools because of decreasing atmospheric pressure. The atmospheric lapse rate is defined as the rate at which a partial of air cools as it rises. Latent heat is the amount of heat released or absorbed during a phase change, such as condensation and/or evaporation. The altitude wind shear typically occurs at any altitude, any direction, at any time. The dew point temperature is a measurement of the temperature which air must be cooled to become saturated. The amount of water vapor or atmospheric moisture that air can hold depends primarily on the ambient air temperature. There are 3 types of thunderstorms, mainly single cell, multicell, and supercell. A microburst is most likely to impact flight during takeoff or landing, and intense downdrafts or downbursts and microbursts are generated by cumulonimbus clouds. So that's a quick look at thunderstorms. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. George Bartisla with the Florida Aviation Network. I'll see you next time with another weather topic. Now stand by for the number for your wings credit. idea how I can find it?
I have to try to see if I can just pull up their tornado formation or Midwest tornado,
Okay.
or something. I think it might have been in Kansas.
Okay. Am
But
I-
yeah, I mean, and it was the most beautiful tornado I've ever seen in my life.
Wow, okay.
Perfect form.
Well, tornado chasers love them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Storm chasers. Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, did you hear the freaking Oklahoma's trying to limit some of that shit now?
I believe it because we've had several people killed during chasing, and some of them were from the National Weather Service.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't heard that. I believe it though.
They were up there in Tulsa talking about it, trying to put a limit on some of the storm chasers on what they're doing. And there's a couple of them that have some vehicles that, holy shit.
I know.
I mean,
Well,
they're
the thing
better than
is,
tanks.
they have businesses and they make money taking people out there.
Yeah. Well, that and the information that they're learning from them, if they can get right in the middle of that tornado, you know, just like the movie Twister, kind of same thing but different. But yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah, you won't see me doing that.
You know what?
I want to live.
Yeah, we do. We're not recording it, that's right.
I grew up in the Midwest. What's that going on?
Oh, okay, I grew up in Indiana.
Yeah, that's University of Illinois. You know, that's kind of
Yep.
that's grew up. Parents taking horses there to the vet clinic, and